Attraction isn't a choice. Attraction isn't a choice. It's taken me a lot of years of thinking, researching, frustration, trying things, testing things out in the real world, getting to know guys who are really good with women, trying to deconstruct what they do. To summarize the gist of attracting women. And it comes down to these words: attraction isn't a choice. And what I mean by attraction isn't a choice is that if you meet a woman and you interact with her long enough that she forms an impression of you, she has an impression of who you are as a person, and she doesn't feel attraction for you, there's essentially nothing you can do about it. No amount of logic, trying to convince her, pursuing her, buying her things, giving her gifts, compliments, none of it'll work. Why? Because it's not a choice. Attraction isn't a choice. The flip side of the coin of attraction isn't a choice is that if you meet a woman and you interact with her long enough that she forms an impression of you and she does feel attraction for you, then there's nothing she can do about it. There's nothing she can do about it. No amount of peer pressure, pressure from her friends, her parents, logical realizations that this isn't the right guy for me, a mismatch with what she thinks she wants. There's nothing she can do about that attraction. And I've seen over my life, as the more powerful that attraction grows inside of a woman, the more irrational things they'll do. The more they'll hang out with guys that are really not good for them. They'll endure abuse, mistreatment, even have their lives destroyed. Now, when I first started seeing this, I thought to myself, there must be some reason for this. It just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. Why would a woman allow a guy to just pull her life down? Or why would she endure an abusive relationship or situation? I can remember when I had the epiphany of attraction not being a choice. It was because I started asking myself that question. It happens enough. Why does it happen? What is going on here? And then it hit me. The only way that women could do this consistently over and over and over and over is if they're not choosing it. They're not choosing it. It's not a choice. I'd like you to think about this in terms of a visual, kind of a visual diagram that I'm going to give you to summarize this attraction isn't a choice philosophy. I think that when two people meet, all right, we're going to let these two diagrams here represent two people. I think that when two people meet and they interact with each other, that there's something going on that we might call the surface structure, okay, or the superficial structure. There's their personas communicating, their social selves. And this is the level of communication that you can see on the surface. What's fascinating about this level of communication is that, in my opinion, almost nothing meaningful happens on that level. Almost nothing meaningful happens on that surface social level. That all the meaning is happening on a deeper level. Now, of course, us guys, especially us intelligent, logical guys, who take things for face value, who are empirical, we're trying to solve our problems with women on this level. One of the challenges with this is that usually this is words. This is the thing we're paying attention to, is words. And when we have problems with women, we say, give me some words, give me the things to say to solve this surface level problem. What's that leaving out? Well, it's leaving out body language, voice tone, patterns of communication, almost all of it. What I'm going to suggest to you is that there's another part that we have inside of all of us, a more primal, basic part that we're all born with, all of us. And this part doesn't really care about this surface communication, this persona level stuff. I'm also going to suggest to you that these two parts can actually communicate with each other directly and bypass all this surface communication. And in fact, I'm going to go as far as to say that if you're standing in the presence of a man who knows how to communicate with this part of a woman, this more essential part, and you're watching it happen, and you're just seeing this surface stuff happening, that you might never see this. I'm even going to suggest that you may have been watching this happen all your lives, right in front of you. You've been watching it all your life. You didn't see it. How could that be? Well, that's one of the mysteries we're going to solve in this program. I also believe that these parts, these inner parts that we come wired with, kind of from birth, all of these potential capabilities, I believe that our modern culture, our society, our parents, religion, all kinds of different ideas have kind of recorded over those fundamental mechanisms, pushed them down, pushed them into the background. I also believe that through other kind of processes, like in a lot of cases, men, us guys not having a lot of men around when we were growing up, we didn't learn how to use these talents and flex these muscles. And I believe that you have this part of you. It's in there. I think that there's a part of you that knows everything that it needs to know about how to attract any woman you want. And what we need to do is work together to help you develop that part so that you can naturally attract women. You can use the equipment that you already have to attract the women that you want. I'd like to tell you a little bit about how I got to this point right here. I want to tell you a little of my own story so that you can understand how I went from, essentially not being able to even approach and start conversations with women to getting the kind of success that I always wanted all my life, and then to being here and working with you to help you develop these things. It all kind of started, the crux of it happened when I moved several years ago down to Southern California. I had gotten a new job, and so I moved from where I lived, moved about 1,000 miles, and I had, at that point, everything that I would think a guy would need to be successful with women. I've never perceived myself as being a very attractive guy. I've never been the kind of guy that women walk up to and start conversations with and approach. But I also don't think that I'm incredibly unattractive. Women are repelled by me. I had a nice car. I had a nice apartment. I was making a really good income for my age. And yet I still couldn't meet women. In fact, I could be out at a bar or club or at a coffee shop or walking down the street and see an attractive woman and just get that feeling that woman's, she's probably single. And I just couldn't start a conversation. Even though I logically knew that I had a lot of advantages that other guys didn't have all over the world. I've always been very conscious of the fact that kind of here in Western society in modern times, we have a tremendous amount of advantages. How could I, with all these advantages, not even be able to start a conversation? And one night I was out with my best friend. We were out at a bar, nightclub, watching some live music, and there was a beautiful woman there, and I remember I really wanted to talk to her, but I just couldn't do it. Couldn't start the conversation. And there was essentially no risk. I mean, she was just like right there. And I went through that cycle again of frustration, of feeling like there was a wall of plexiglass kind of between me and her. I just couldn't get through it. And I remember we walked outside and we were kind of walking back to our car and we were talking about it. And I said, I am going to figure this out. I'm going to do whatever it takes to figure this out. I have to do this. And that's kind of a point. It's an inflection point or a decisive moment that a lot of us have in our lives that usually, when you have one of those moments, it usually leads to big change. And for me, it did. That started me on a path or a process that continues to this day. And what I did is I went out and I started the best I knew how by reading books. And I started buying popular books on the topic of relationships and dating and that kind of thing. Then that stuff, as I read it, I was thinking to myself, okay, I can tell that this person's trying to communicate something here, but I can't see how this translates into me being able to meet women. It just didn't seem to connect. In fact, most of the things that were written were about relationships and how to have a better relationship, not about how to attract a woman in the first place. And the more I got into that and really studying some of these things, the more I found that a lot of these relationship experts have been divorced 3, 4, 5 times. I guess that makes you an expert in some ways. The real big aha came for me when I did something that I'm also going to recommend that you do, which is I went out and I made friends with several guys who were really good with women. Okay, found guys who were great with women. And I watched what they did. And I had them watch what I was doing. And what was interesting was for several months as I was doing this process, the things that they were doing, that I was watching them do to get women's phone numbers and be effective with women, they didn't really make sense. It was like this process was happening, but I was only watching the surface. I couldn't see the inner connection. And when I would say to them, all right, what should I do in this situation, or what should somebody do here, in a lot of cases they looked at me like, duh, like how could you not know? And sometimes the things that they would say to me to do would be counterintuitive. They wouldn't make sense. And I struggled with it for a long time. There was a part of my logical brain, my logical, empirical, experience-oriented mind, my rational self, that couldn't get past, I know what I should be doing, but I'm just not doing it. Okay, and because I had this thought in my mind like, I know what I should be doing, but I'm not doing it, it kept me closed so I couldn't see what was actually effective and what would actually work. Does that make sense? Follow me there? Sometimes we get our paradigm or our model so solid that us thinking we understand the situation, but we're just not doing it, prevents us from even seeing what we should be doing. Well, through a lot of trial and error and a lot of testing of a lot of things that, I would be embarrassed to even admit in this day and age that I've done, I finally started to see how the pieces fit together. I started to see how the whole thing worked. And eventually I started developing theories and concepts of my own and testing them and refining them and working with other guys who are really great with women to put together some of my ideas. To summarize that little section, as we're learning here, I want you to really think about this part of you. I want you to think about developing this part of you. I want you to let go of maybe some of your preconceived notions about what's socially right or what you should be doing. One of the things that happened for me, by the way, as I was developing a few years back, was I woke up one day, and this was probably in the neighborhood of 3 or 4 years after I started my journey. I woke up one day, and I remember kind of pondering success with women. And I had a realization. I realized that the insecure feeling that I had been walking around with that needy part of me that when I was single felt like I had to get out there and find a woman or else I might never meet another one again. The part of me that felt desperate was gone. And that I wasn't motivated by that fear anymore. I didn't feel like I had to do something now in order to go find a woman, or else that was going to be the end of my life, and I was going to die alone. And when that shift happened, the way I think back on it is that many things happened in my life. Many things kind of lined up, and that's when I feel like I took the power back in my life. I took the power from something that was outside of me, and in a lot of ways imaginary, and I pulled it back inside of myself. And as a result of that, what was interesting was everything else in my life started working out and lining up. Once I kind of got rid of that core insecurity and that core part that felt inadequate, all the other things started to go right. And I want to recommend to you that you make the commitment to do what it takes to get this part of your life handled, because I believe that once you do, you will prove to yourself that you can do this kind of thing. And that will start a chain reaction that will help you get other things handled that maybe you've wanted to get handled for a long time. A lot of people ask me, they say, "Are you in a relationship?" After they find out what I do. "Are you married?" And sometimes I have a girlfriend, and sometimes I don't. And through that, I was, after that happened, a lot of times I was thinking to myself, why is it that I get to ask this question so much? And then it kind of hit me. In our culture, most people define success, the ability to be successful with women, as having one, right, or being married to one. That's the preconceived notion. And also as part of it, I realized that in order to get a woman, especially a mature, emotionally healthy, interesting, attractive woman who might be good long-term relationship or marriage material, you're probably going to have to do some work. You're probably going to have to work on this for a few minutes. Okay, you're not going to go through a couple hours of training and then walk out and meet the healthiest, most mature and attractive woman in the world who's going to say, "I want to marry you." And I think that the side benefit, but ultimately a direct benefit, of learning how to be more successful with women in dating is that it will prepare you to be a better relationship partner. It'll ultimately set a foundation that when the right woman does appear in your life, you'll know what to do, and you won't screw it up. And then you'll be able to hold on to her and keep her. Just with a quick show of hands, who here is interested in ultimately finding one really great woman, a mature, attractive, emotionally healthy woman, to enjoy a long-term relationship or marriage? Raise your hand. I'm serious, raise it high. Okay, that's about everybody. I don't think I even see any hands that aren't up. Isn't that interesting that we're all here to learn about how to be more successful with dating, but we really want long-term relationship? As you know, relationships are failing at a greater and greater rate. Why are they failing at a greater and greater rate? I think that a lot of it has to do with the fact that as men, we have not taken control of our lives and developed ourselves and become more mature, authentic, masculine men who make good relationship partners. And I think another piece of it is we haven't gotten the skills we need to attract women and keep them attracted. I think that if you learn how to become more successful with women in dating, that will naturally lead to a lot more success with women and a relationship. Now, when I started from the ground up, okay, or I used what you might call inductive learning, which is the way we teach our children essentially in schools for the most part. It's the long, hard, slow way to learn things. Because I didn't have, really good mentors around me at the beginning. I just went and did what came natural. I wanted to go learn the tricks. I thought that was what would help me.